You can't see it.
I'm wearing my 404 gender not found shirt.
I have fun shirt that says gender roles may be toxic, even though I actually forgot what it said because I could only see it in the mirror and I couldn't read it. So I was real confused what it said.
I am wearing absolutely nothing about gender. I just have my Mandalorian knuckle. Just in case everybody forgot that I'm a big geek. You know?
That does slip my mind.
Yeah, and I would also like to say, Amelie, would you like to talk about your mountains behind you? Because they are very exciting.
I love them. Okay. So these are all... I custom designed this mountain range behind me. I used a design that the company started, but it was just like 3 or 4 different colors. It was like raspberry and grayscale. So I changed it all to be Angela and my pride flags.
I love it so much.
So at the very end there, you can see it's got black and gray and green and white and yellow. That represents my agenderism and agenderism. I don't know.
It's whatever you want it to be.
All words were made up at one.
And the yellow also is included in the gray romantic flag, which is how I identify my romantic relationships. And so that is Mount Meh. And then you have the genderqueer flag, which we're calling gender ridge, so genderage, or sorry, queerage, that's what we're calling it. So queerage, ha ha ha. And then peak bisexual is up at the top, and Pride Rock, and then
Pride Rock backs me up.
Yep. And then behind me, so the ace flag and the demisexual flag have the same colors, but specifically this is the demisexual flag that we are representing, and it is Demi Summit. And it's funny because it's one of the lower ones, and so
I love it. All right.
It's punny and it's prideful, and I'm really excited for it. And it also like it dampens sound, so it's actually like a really good thing to film in front of.
Because it's thick felt.
Yep.
All right, we all enjoyed our trek through
mountains.
Through the mountain range.
Dude, I mean, I got nothing. I mean, I just got movie posters.
Well, I think we're here to talk about episode 11.
Yes. Episode 11, yes. But I just had to talk about it because damn it, it's behind them.
I know. No, that's fair. I just want to start off with saying because I got so engrossed in listening to Jack and Robin have their discussion, and I'm like eating chocolate covered pretzels and just like engaged in listening, that when I decided that my character was going to appear, I 100% forgot to have an accent for like 5 minutes.
I didn't want to call you on it because I was like, she's gonna remember eventually. I didn't want to be like, Tanya, you sound different, but I was like, she'll remember eventually.
And it's like, well, this whole thing where I'm like, well, I just said something, do I change now? And then I was in this whole head circle where I was like, do I just start, or do I wait for a scene break and then come back and have the accent? Like, I was not sure for so long.
Wait for a scene break. Oh my gosh.
So yeah, I'm pretty sure you see it on my face because like I have glass face sometimes. It's like, I don't have an accent. I don't know what to do. Just keep saying like monosyllabic things and no one will notice.
Meanwhile, Aster was just Meanwhile, Aster was just a punk ass little kid the whole time.
I want
like no.
I talk about the whole Aster thing because it's like background. It starts off as like background comedy, and then it's like background drama, like real heartbreaking drama for anybody like paying attention to background story, right? Because it starts off and we're all like, we've got to get going, right? We've got to get out of here. It is not safe. We are with a person who might not be safe, and we got a GTFO. And Aster is like, I didn't get any sleep. I'm not gonna be pretty today.
It's
because
not
I
even
didn't
just
get
that.
any
It's
sleep."
like, I didn't get any sleep. We're gonna fight some big bad people. I didn't get any sleep. I won't be able to do anything to help you people because I have no spells either. So it's like, it's a
Right,
mix
and
of
it's just,
both.
like, throwing a snit about it, right?
It's like,
And I love it. Meanwhile, Finn, who also hasn't had any sleep, has basically munched on the equivalent of a caffeine bar.
yeah.
Right? It's just like, I will push through. But then when
You people
we
who
were
don't
all
need
overcome
sleep
with
for
fear,
spells.
like when we were all overcome with fear, right? And
Yeah.
it hit Aster the hardest, longest. And it's like there's this big epic fight happening, and then internal party conflict happening. And the whole time, Aster is like laying in the mud, crying their eyes out. And there's just this whole dramatic shift. And it's all background to
Yeah.
a lot of the main movement. And I appreciated it. I really appreciated it in that 3D story kind of thing, because I think of stories that way. What's happening in the forefront, what's happening in the background, right? But I don't know how many people catch those, do you think?
I also appreciate it because it was like almost everybody else in the group was focusing on fighting and attacking and like doing the D&D of it all, like the that tactical kind of combat stuff. And then Aster is just like,
Yeah, no, and like the whole thing is like, it was just like everybody was fighting, and I'm just like, in theory, yes, I can fight being frightened. Because that's how the technical stuff works, but Aster wouldn't. No.
Right.
Their worst fear, nah, they would not try to fight that. So,
like, that's when you start going into like raw and character stuff, like rules is written and like playing to your character. Like, yeah, rules is written. Aster can technically still cast spells. They just can't move closer. They would get disadvantaged, stuff like that.
Right.
But character-wise, Aster 100% was like, nah, bitch. Like, I ain't doing nothing. Like, I'm staying right here. I am not approaching this. This is not for me. Y'all do what you want. Whatever.
I'm gonna lay over here and have a good cry. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
So
I want to ask.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say I want to ask Amelie how they felt about Jack's little brush with permanent
I like
death
little
there.
brush
So,
with
yeah,
death?
yeah. I've never actually had a character reach that point. Because usually I am playing spellcasters who, you know, are in the middle / to the back. I had a rogue at one point who would just stab and disengage. So I haven't had a fighter who would just stay there. And I thought that the roles really did well this time and like played into the characters, with Jack being the only one who didn't get scared, who didn't have that fear. Because yeah, her thing is protection, her thing is defense, and she was able to turn around and be that last line of defense for her friends, for her little army. Like, I was scared of having to come up with a new character because I'm really falling in love with Jack.
100%, and you probably see it in my face too, because again, glass face. I was trying to figure out what Fenn's reaction was going to be when Jack died. Like, that's how close I felt.
Okay, this is where we start doing the like metagame, and Sarah talks as the DM out of character, you know, obviously out of character. There is the possibility, if you guys wish for it, there is resurrection. If that's something that your characters, but that's another thing we haven't talked about, is basically, do your characters have wills? Do you have DNRs? Do your characters have that? Because we know that probably Whistler would not be into it, because Whistler serves the goddess of death in the transition from life to death. And the idea of resurrection may or may not be anathema to her. You haven't asked her yet. So you haven't asked Jack, if you fall in battle and you go out and your soul leaves your body, what do you want to do after that? Do you want us to try to resurrect you or not?
Conversation upcoming.
Yeah, and honestly, Jack hasn't thought about that ever. Orcs while they do have a standing army, it's just as much in the way that I've come about it. It's just as much, Army Corps of Engineers as anything else. Like they're a standing defense army. It's what is left over from a time when orcs were more warlike and were more interfighting, and that's just not a need anymore. And so, yeah, this is the first time that she's encountered death in a way that is real. And I mean, especially like she grew up. What?
Is your mom still going to be in town when we get back?
I don't think so. I don't think so.
He's already left.
All right, because I'm like, that gonna be tough.
Yeah. Like, I think that these portals are not good for business. But I see where you're going with that, and but yeah, so Jack has never ever thought about death as a real thing, and so in orcish culture, resurrection just isn't an option. Much like gender, or much like transness, it's not a thing that is considered because it's not a thing that happens. And so, yeah, I think that if she was resurrected without being asked beforehand, there would be a lot of confusion and existential crises involved, not because it's anathema to her, but because it is just not a thing. Like the whole tabaxi with like the lich kitty thing, like she kind of like just tuned out of that because she didn't pay. That doesn't make sense. It is alien to her. So yeah, I don't think that, like, again, metagaming, I would resurrect her because, like, I would like to think that Fen would, be like, no, orcs just don't do that.
In the same way, because I don't think Minotaurs wouldn't do it either.
Yeah. That's not a thing. And while you really want your friend back,
right,
you didn't ask.
Right. And I mean, it's a tough call because there's that whole thing, that what you say you're going to do in a situation, and you firmly believe, like, my moral compass and my personal strength mean that in this moment I'm going to make this call, right? I could pull the plug, but can you? Like, when it really comes down to it, which I think is a whole other layer. But I think that it's now in the back of... So for Finland, I think that death is something that she's very much aware of because of her backstory. But it's also a thing that she tries not to dwell on because it inhabits that terrifying place in the back of her mind that she doesn't like to go to. And so I think that buried in between, like, it back in everything, this whole escaping this very real threat, getting friends to safety, getting these portals closed, doing all that is now this, it's no longer very much in the background. It's kind of banging at the forefront of her mind, which I think is going to be very unsettling for her moving forward. This thought that, like, this is her Azza, right? Is supposed to be that year or so that, Minotaurs leave and get to basically become adults, become really part of understanding the world and choose a path and have a better understanding. And that it's, not quite a Rumspringa or like a gap year or anything, because you are supposed to be out, like, bettering your
doing stuff.
You're supposed to be doing stuff, yeah. But
It's like the gap year where you do like the volunteering gap year as opposed to just like I'm not doing anything.
Yeah, it's like the hardest job you'll ever love, kind of. Yeah. But I don't think it's occurred to her that you could die on your Aza, right? And not only that, the possibility of losing her best friend, added, is just going to be a great deal of stress moving forward, and probably. I feel like I honestly keep feeling like she's kind of oscillating between being very panicky and trying to be very strong, right? And mimicking what she knows like her papu would do. What all these big grizzled old minotaurs would be doing. But she's also like, there's a lot of flight and freight in here.
Meanwhile, Jack is very much just like, okay, we're making the next decision. Okay, time to make the next decision. Time to make the next decision. And she's very much in that emergency take charge position right now. And she wasn't upset that everyone else ran away. She was just like, okay, nope, my turn to be the hero, as it were. She did not want to die, but also like the way that it panned out, like if she died making sure that her friends were safe, that was going to be okay for her. And so that
would like a veneer though, because I feel like that's how I'm playing Finland, is that the veneer is that she's goal focused, right? And is that next step, what's the next logical step? But for her, that's all a scaffolding that is keeping her from thinking about and having to deal with more serious thoughts.
It starts as a veneer for Jack, but she's comfortable in that position.
Yeah.
She's making good decisions in an emergency.
Right.
And so because it's working out in her favor, it becomes less of a veneer and more of a confidence.
That's legit.
Annika, everything okay? You just gotta...
I know.
I can't hear you.
I was just messing with stuff, and then something happened on Discord, and I'm like, oh.
Okay, I was like, oh no, are we down?
I saw the, oh god, and I was like, well,
yeah, I saw the eye movement.
That face.
It's fine.
So I do have a question as the DM. You do not have to share this if you do not feel comfortable. I did say in there, whatever you imagine as your worst fear is happening in front of you right now. If you guys would like to share with that what your character's worst fear is, you can. If you don't want to, again, no pressure. But if you want to share what was going through your mind right then, now is the time.
I didn't have to make that decision. Hey!
100% asked. So at the end of our game, I messaged everybody and I said, hey, I'm probably, after the whole break from Sherwood, I'm probably not going to play Aster.
Spoilers!
So that is because of the whole goddamn minute, because I was fucking frightened the whole minute. And Aster's worst fear is their dad dying, because they lost their mom at an early age. And so that's their worst fear, and basically they just, like, watched that over and over for a whole minute. And so, yeah.
Yeah, that's...
Do what you will with that. Mike just said, no, I feel bad.
No! Okay.
Also, I wanted to bring it as a DM thing. I asked Mike, I think I said this before, I asked Mike to come in and I said, be evil, be bad, mess their shit up. And Mike said, okay. And that's what we did. That's 100% these last 2 episodes. That's what Mike's character has come in and done, which is exactly what this group needed. I'm not even going to lie.
So I want to say this to Mike, because Mike is watching us on Twitch right now. Don't feel bad. We have all agreed that we're here to participate in a story that is engaging and interesting to us, not be completely married to these characters, you know, if it feels like a character needs to exit for a reason, then that's part of the story, and we are more engaged in the story than we are in the characters to an extent. I mean, we all love our characters, but like, I know I'm like I don't want to walk away from Finland like right now, but I don't think that Annika's coming at it from a I quit and flipping the table
He's like,
kind of standpoint.
for supervillain, I'm kind of a softie, is what he said after that.
Okay, so hands down in real life, behind your back, Mike, we call you a big cinnamon bun.
Yeah.
Yes.
For sure.
I just need everybody to know that Mike is
Mike is good people. He's
Yes.
doing what I asked him to do.
Yeah. But yeah,
I think big evil should make you
Question everything?
question. Yeah, it should make you question everything.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're not having an existential crisis. You're not having to fight something where. Woo!
Okay, this is me going, this is part of the hero's journey. This is part of the hero's journey. Like,
I
I
have
don't
the
want to
book
completely
somewhere.
reference. But do you have the book nearby? I don't have mine nearby.
I think it's on the shelf that is literally.
Mine's like
covered up
over
with
there. But mine's over there somewhere. All my books are across the room. But I would go get it and be like, hero's journey. Hero's journey.
So I read that. So for those who don't know, I'm a big Star Wars fan, and that's a whole other kettle of fish. But because I was a Star Wars fan from a very young age, I got very interested in the hero's journey. Because for the original trilogy, Joseph Campbell was heavily consulted, and his works were very much a part of developing that story, which is what makes that original trilogy hold together so well, because they are based in a Western story arc that we all are aware of.
It's just ingrained in our brains that we aren't even sure. We don't even know we know it. Like, we don't even know
it's
we know
beyond, it's like a trope on steroids.
Yeah.
So it is a meme. So I know that nowadays we use meme to be a funny thing I shared on the internet, right?
Yeah.
But a meme
is mimetic knowledge.
But mimetic knowledge is these bits of knowledge that we share that make our zeitgeist, that create our culture. And for Westerners, the hero's journey is very much embedded in our zeitgeist. And so I love those moments where you have to face yourself. It's Luke in the cave, right? Where you are standing there in this moment and you have to ask yourself, who am I? What is, like, who is choosing my purpose? Am I choosing my purpose? Is somebody directing my purpose? And it reflects real life too. You know, there are moments in not just our daily lives, but culturally, like right now, where you are faced with something so it seems like A, unavoidable, B, like something a knot you cannot untie. You don't know where it begins, you don't know where it ends. But it's how you tackle that, right? That says a lot about your character. And I don't think there's a wrong way. You know, I don't think that I dug in and I untied the knot is the answer. It's an answer. So I appreciate storytelling moments like this, is the bottom line.
Yeah.
Journey.
Yeah.
OOC.
Something that, like, Jack might have to, deal with is the fact that, while she didn't see her worst fear, she doesn't know what everyone else saw. She doesn't know that everyone else was frightened because their worst fear was in front of them. She has no idea. She just knows that her friends were all scared. There was an enemy coming at them, and she had to be the...
I mean, for all Jack knows, they were just scared of that troll.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
I imagine
you guys
that
haven't had a debrief. You haven't had that, like, decompression after battle.
So I'll be honest, I've been trying to figure out what it is exactly that Fen saw, because I imagined at some point, because I was like, I could keep going and it'll just remain a mystery. But I was like, there's got to be a point where Jack is going to be like, Finn has seen trolls. Finn has dealt with trolls. Like, it's a mountain culture, issue that sometimes trolls get worked up and you can't. I don't know how to say it.
Also, like to say this is a metaphor, like, and not a very, very thinly veiled one. Like, very much for those of us that, because we just did a panel on being like marginalized gender in gaming. Like, the fact that we just dealt with a troll in game, and that's things that we all deal with out of game. Yeah. Very not very thinly veiled like metaphor, simile, reference at all. Okay, sorry.
Analogy. Are we
and you mean that when you try and actually engage it, you actually get hurt as much as as much as you're hurting
sometimes it? Sometimes your best option is to just walk away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, Tanya, you were on a thing, but I had to throw that in there.
And then I realized I was like, story-wise, I just feel like at some point Jack's gonna be like, why would you run? What the hell? Like, what? And I was like, well, shit. I mean, like,
in that moment, what Jack was thinking was, Finn's in charge of getting the scared people out. Like, it was.
But Finn was hiding behind a big rock.
Jack didn't see that. Jack didn't see anything of what was happening. Jack turned around, pulled out her sword and her shield, and said, "Let's go, mother cluckers." And when she saw that, she got the idea that everyone else was scared because nobody else was coming up next to her.
Right.
So that's when she was just like, nah, run, get out of here. I'm going to take care of this. This is my thing. This is what I do. And so in her mind, Finn is in charge of that part of protecting the party, of making sure that everyone else gets out. So she doesn't know yet that Finn was scared. And so that's going to be, that's going to be really interesting.
Get prepared for this big decompress on Sunday when we record on Sunday.
Yeah. Because I'm like, for Finn, it's going to be like an embarrassment. This is a thing that has never happened. Like, she's never basically been forced into a position where she couldn't engage.
Be prepared for Aster to say nothing.
Well, Aster's in a fireman's carry on my shoulder. Like, she can fall asleep. Don't worry.
Wait, now you can sleep. Yeah, now you can sleep.
Upside down. You can nap.
Not a shower, though. No baths.
No baths.
Yeah. Can I get my long rest, though, at least?
You're fine.
Can I get my 4 hours? When all my spells
like,
back.
Ellen needs so little, and you're just like, I didn't even get that.
I was like, I need my spells, please.
I really appreciated how you played Aster in that time. Like, that to me was some excellent storytelling. Of like, I am going to be the grump who does not do no sleep well. You literally need your beauty rest.
Yeah, I mean,
because it's magical.
Right.
Yeah, well, it also plays into the fact that Aster really didn't have any spells left. Like, Aster was like, what the hell am I gonna do?
So I literally had I had the new spells that I got from leveling up.
Well, because you cast Clouded Deck.
Yeah, I had 2 level 2 spell slots and then 3 level 3s that I spent one sending a message for joke, for shits and giggles. So I had 2 left. I had 2 of each.
Love Aster.
That was it. Those were all the spells I had, and I was like, oh, I don't really want to use them.
But I think it's good because very few classes, I mean, none really are super well-rounded. You tend to be, you're good at being the fighter in the back. You're good at being the fighter in the front. You are good at being the spellcaster. You're good at healing people, but it's very hard to do everything. if you're doing characters well, if you're not trying to like
also
min-max
the whole
and
thing is
munchkin.
that like I can understand why none of your characters understood what Aster was going through, because none of you guys are like super heavy spellcasters. Like we have the 2 paladins, and they don't
You're like,
even like.
right?
Well, and then Robin.
Yeah,
But Robin also already has their magical items
Yeah.
that they have already made.
yeah,
And
so it's
Robin
like,
has Pan.
No
So
one
Robin has other
understands.
things.
No one understands that I need sleep for spells.
Right? And the fighters are like, wait, what do you mean there's no money in my bank? There's still checks in my checkbook. Like there's one. They all run out.
Yeah.
Jack is just like, why wouldn't I be allowed to eat? Like, I'm in a community. They're gonna feed me. Duh.
Like what?
It's
I don't
okay.
get it.
It's okay.
Um,
I'm excited, but I'm sad for Aster to go eventually. But y'all, I'm so ready for new character.
I know. All right.
So
For those
ready.
who don't know, Annika has already it's already arted up.
Everything's
Backstory.
ready.
They have been sending me messages like, "Can
It's
I do
all
this?"
done.
And I'm like, "Yeah." I'm like, "Yeah, let's do it." I was like, "We can tweak it like this because this is blah blah." And they were like, "Okay." And then I got like a full backstory, and I'm like, "Okay, I'll read this when I get home." Like, I was like,
The hyperfixation was real. And it still
So-
is.
So, tell us in the comments, because like I was really concerned that I was gonna have to roll a new character, but I have no ideas for a new character. So tell me what I should play next, like no matter what. 'Cause I
How
have
about
no
a
idea.
nimble? This is for me. How about a nimble right?
does not play a nimble right in a game within the next 3 months, she's gonna have 12 nosebleeds. Like, it's just what's gonna happen.
It's okay.
I will also take circular spores through it. Or bunny onesie wearing goblin. These are the 3 options. Because I have
Dude, I just went back to my roots with a tiefling.
a tiefling.
My first ever D&D character was a tiefling, and I was like, I haven't played a tiefling since then.
Tanya, is there a tea based on tieflings?
Not yet. But
Oh.
man, I love a good tea pun. So
My mom just said you should
there
play.
will be a tea. There's a tea coming out. What's today? The 14th.
Yes.
So there is a tea coming out in 2 days. That is a tea pun.
So my mom said a girly girl that is like a badass fighter.
That's what Jack
I
is!
know, that's what
That
I
is
was
what
saying.
Jack-
Like, that defeats the whole purpose.
Just do Jack, redo it. Like, Jack. Yeah, Jack again.
Just Jack, but like a different version, like something else.
Let me see.
So
Do you
I
want
know
to be a furbolg this time?
I love Firbolgs.
So, okay, this is
so
just something that,
much.
as the DM, I never get to talk about character and like characters that I like to play and stuff like that. So I'm just going to take some time because we were talking about characters. So I am lucky enough to, again, to be the DM to make all these NPCs that you don't get to see all their really cool backstory and you don't get to see all the really cool things they can do. And these NPCs, a lot of them are so much more they're like level 10 to 12. And so like if they just came in, they would just be wiping. Like the group would have nothing to do if the NPCs came in and were like, yeah, we took care of that troll in 2 hits. Like, don't duh, you need acid or fire to take care of a troll. And like, this group is just like, oh, I hit it and it goes down and it comes back up and they're like, why the fuck is it coming back
I
up?
don't yet have a weapon that has flaming attached to it.
Yeah. So
My
next
mom
on the list.
clarified.
I might talk to the DM about getting some magical weapons.
My mom clarified and said, I meant like glitter and rainbows.
Okay, so instead
more.
of girly floral aesthetic, which is what Jack is, do me.
Okay. I'm gonna
You, for the character.
So I have the ability to upload a picture onto the stream. I can put
So a fearbulg that puts
Dude,
glitter.
Fearbulgs
in
are
her
so cute. Love
to bring it back to a
Fearbulgs.
conversation.
Okay, I'm getting on my phone because I actually don't know what a fearbulg is. Like, I know that.
they're in Volos, I believe. Again, all of my stuff is over
Yeah,
there.
they're all my books. My books are 4 feet away from me. I can't.
Yeah, mine are too, and I'm not getting up. Segment, go get it for me. Segment, go use your disposable thumb.
I love them.
So
oh, they found a fear bulk.
I play.
Oh no! Like I just googled it and clicked images. Like, yeah, you know what they kind of remind me of is that like in just some of these illustrations is the rocks in Frozen.
Yeah, I can see that.
I'm gonna go off, and we're gonna talk about Critical Role for a hot minute here. Okay, so just bear with me. So before Pumat Soul was introduced, before Pumat Soul was introduced, Firbolgs, they are giantkin, but they were very much like the look was very much like they are in the pictures that you get in Volo's Guide to Monsters. But the way that Matt described Pumat Soul was having kind of a bovine nose, which is not incorrect for what you see. But people just took that and went, cow person.
Cow. Yeah.
So now, so the other 2 Firbolgs that have since appeared in Critical Role, sorry, Annika and anybody else that watches it, spoiler alert, if you're not up to it, but Neela and Caduceus are very much like deer cow people.
There is a Caduceus Clay tea.
Yeah, I saw that.
Tabletop tea, so clearly.
So like before the introduction of Pumat Soul, like 2 years ago, Firbolgs were very much giantkin that had a little bit of fur. And then Matt describes Pumat Soul as having a bovine nose, and now it's just like, okay, they're cow people. So we having cow people in minotaurs in our world, and we had somebody that was interested in playing a Firbolg, and they were like, well, and I was like, first of all, there can be more than one cow people, and second of all, they're different. Because if we want Firbolgs to still be in that lane, I was like, there are yaks, there are buffalo, there are goats and deer, and like there's all these other like ungulate,
like ungulate people.
Yeah, all the other ungulates and hoofed creatures that we could like use. So I was like, don't worry about it. It's like minotaurs are just a very specific, like they are like bulls, cows. So that just has to go on like that rant because Firbolgs before this were just like kind of short giants with shaggy hair, and now they're cow people.
Yeah, that's what Google was showing me.
So it's kind of funny to me, because I had this whole thing because I am an old D&D player. I'm like, I fell asleep somewhere and I woke up and tieflings were all sorts of crazy colors, which was not what they were before, right? Like it just
because you read old D&D stuff and they're like tieflings can be red
or human colors.
All
human colors or red.
And then basically what happened was the queers got a hold of it, and the queers said no. So the queers said any color, tieflings are rainbows.
Somebody on TikTok actually like made this whole the TikTok is hilarious.
But that's what got me thinking. So I'm gonna do I want to let people in on my little like down the rabbit hole drow? We can have that conversation later too. Rabbit hole that I fell down into. Was it yesterday?
Yeah, that's something that we talked about. Is we do not have drow, whatever you want to call them. We do not, we haven't met any of them at this point in Rendenhurst. But I did not want to stereotype an entire race. Same thing with goblins and orcs and all of these other sort of quote unquote monstrous races. That they are always bad. That's not what we do. But so I was just calling them, they're called mountain elves. So we have wood elves, and you have sea elves, and you have desert elves, and you have mountain elves. And as we've talked about before, like I have a big idea, but I'm also just like, if you guys have ideas, just write that shit down and tell me. And Tanya decided to go down a rabbit hole, and we are kind of vibing on this because it makes sense. Yeah, literal rabbit hole, because it makes sense. Because I'm thinking, I was like, okay, they're mountain elves, which is why they have dark skin and light hair, because they don't live in the light. And I'm like, that's as far as I got with it. I was like, okay, whatever. And then Tanya went, so Tanya, take it away.
So so we made a post recently where we asked people, do you create characters just for funsies that aren't actually maybe going to be in a game? We all do it. It's kind of like a... But
again, as the DM, I'm like, ooh, this OC can be an NPC now. Lucara is an NPC I created like 3 years ago for a game that never happened, and I get to use her.
I am so happy that the Circle of Spores druid is now codified in Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, right? And so because I, Tanya, am enamored of fungus, really, really, really wanted to create a character. And for whatever reason, it felt really natural that this character would be a drow or drow. And then when I started picturing her in my head, though, it just, the whole very, very dark, almost black skin and the white hair just didn't feel right. And honestly, from a biological sense, it just didn't feel right, because when you see, other than like the mammals that live towards the front of caves, anything that lives in a cave for a long time doesn't necessarily get dark, right? In fact, they get translucent. But I was like, I didn't want to go that route either, because that's largely like amphibians and insects and stuff. But I thought, well, if you look at the way that animals just naturally develop, they would have some kind of camouflaged. And so I was like, what if then their skin basically looks like rock, right? The kind of whatever rock is around them. Yeah, you can post some of the pictures that I did. So like, I started thinking, so I myself, I love that y'all both picked pictures that I posted, but they were different. So I have vitiligo, which means that there are parts of my body that no longer make color. The bits in your cell that create color are completely dead, right? And so I love the idea of this look that is almost like vitiligo. This, so in the one that Annika showed, right, that is like a reddish stone, and then it's actually like a white and purple fungus that is growing on it, which is just fantastic, right? So I was like, what if the skin looks like this? Or like, it also is like, think like stretch marks, right? Like the kind of extreme stretch marks that people get like after pregnancy or after they've lost a lot of weight or whatever. And it's because that is very reminiscent of striations in, like this, like striations that you see in rock. And I was like, what if like that was like considered kind of like the height of beauty, right? To have these almost like stretch mark looks. And then Courtney, who some of you might remember from our holiday one shot, she suggested that for festivals, they even paint those kind of stretch marks and the little like vitiligo marks with metallic paints, so it's like ores, like looks like ore in rock. And so I just went on this hours long journey of just in my head completely reinventing the way that this race looks.
Can't be drow that have dark skin, and like
Right.
because if they live in an area that's coal or obsidian or something
Right.
that is a darker rock,
Like
iron ore, whatever it is,
Yep.
if that's where their mountains, if that's what their mountains look like. But then if you have the ones that live in like that have like limestone, like their skin is not going to be quite as dark, obviously. And
Right.
if it's kind of reflective of the mountain and the like stone that they live around, there's like, we all know this, like stone comes in 8 bazillion different colors. So it just depends on what mountain range they're from, essentially, and where they live in said mountain range.
Right, are they outside the mountain, high up in the mountain, very deep in the mountain? Like, that I think that, and so I went on this whole thing, and I was just like, if I can fall asleep for 5 friggin' minutes and wake up and tieflings can be a million different colors, and I missed that, I'm gonna friggin' change this for me. So I'm like, in any world I run in, that's what they're gonna look like from like here on out, because I took a lot of geology classes. I was actually a geology major at SFA for 3 years. Before I was told that my only career paths were oil and gas or oil and gas, which is not true, by the way. If you're in geology and somebody tells you that, do not believe them. But I did, and I was like, I don't want to do that, so I bailed, and ultimately went with archaeology and classical studies, and then eventually museum studies. I have 2 degrees. Yay. And this is what I'm doing with my time. Actually, I love it.
Meanwhile, you do that. I make tiefling green. That's how That's me.
Is that how should the tiefling be green?
Hey,
Tiefling green.
Tiefling green. So here's the thing: is especially going back to the DM, like, and of course Tanya and I've said this all the time. Like Tanya and I remember a time playing D&D when tieflings weren't a thing. Like there was a time when you played D&D when you did not have the option of being a tiefling.
Nope.
You did not have the option of being.
You could be a man or a dwarf.
Or an elf. And dwarf was a friggin' dwarf and elf were both classes. So Tanya and I remember that time. Like, I remember when I first started playing, your options for races were human, dwarf, elf,
and
halfling, and gnome, half-elf. You couldn't even play a half-orc. Like, half-orc wasn't even an option for that. And in doing so, you were class restricted. So humans could basically be any class. But if you played an elf, you could not be a paladin. If you played a gnome, you could not be a fighter, whatever it was. Like, it was class restricted, which is stupid. Which is one reason when we were like, this is one reason why 5e is like, we're like, mwah, to 5e. Like, mwah.
So, yeah, I want to say that it makes sense. So to walk people back, and one of these days, Sarah and I, and maybe Mike, if we can get him to agree.
Any kind of old school gamer I can find, I will run we'll do D&D and then A&D and then...
But like to walk down the history, the sort of evolution of it started. I mean, I want you to picture like Warhammer and those kinds of games where
not even Warhammer, because Warhammer wasn't. It was Napoleonic and Civil War wargaming. That's what it was.
What would people like? Yeah, watching this be aware of, right? Yeah. Where the way that your character, I please go look up Men and Monsters and read it. But it's so prescribed, right? It's so prescribed about how you can interact with the world. And so the first iterations of D&D and then AD&D, right, are morphing out of that. So it starts off super prescriptive, and then they lose a little bit of that prescriptiveness and a little bit more of that prescriptiveness. And now we've gotten to 5e, where Wizards of the Coast is like flip the table, and they're like, fucking play it however you want. It even says so.
It's funny because that's how languages evolve too.
Yes.
Like if you watch if you look at I'm just using Greek as an example. Like there's funny enough, where the majority of the people talking here are familiar with Greek, But
are we going to talk about the digamma? Because if we talk about the digamma, then hi Lars.
No, but if you look at like ancient versus Koine versus Byzantine
Hellenic,
versus Hellenic versus I use the term I learned the term Byzantine,
right.
And then modern Greek. What you see is a less and less grammatical structure being enforced, but more and more vocabulary.
Yeah.
So much more vocabulary. And so the complexity is still there, but it's just a different complexity. And so the way that you're describing this evolution of D&D sounds very familiar, because you get less and less prescriptive in how things can be structured, but then that allows for more stuff.
Yeah, we're going to talk about more stuff, right? So there's more. So I do miss.
That was my geek out of the day. Okay, thank you.
I want to say it was it 2 or 3? When did all the books came out where you could get an entire book that was, we could get an entire book that was like the Fighter's Handbook, the
3 and 3.5. I think that was 3 and 3.5.
Okay, I was like, it was right in there somewhere. I remember. I kind of missed those, but I was even reading Rime of the Frost Maiden, and there's like a little blurb at the bottom of one of the pages at the beginning, like that's like yay big, but it basically says, look, we put this book together. We think it's a really interesting story. Like there's some great characters, and you can like run it start to finish. But if you want, you can just take parts of it. You can just use a building that we have a map for. You can use the map and change all the names. You can like do whatever you want with this that we've created. You don't have to use it as a whole. It doesn't have to be a campaign module. It can just be a thing you harvest for parts, basically. I am paraphrasing, clearly. And I thought, why is this blurb not bigger? Why have we not like made it super bold, like put it on the front page, and it's like everywhere in every D&D book? Because it's a thing that, you know, Sarah and I keep coming back to, is that the people who develop these books, who develop these campaign modules, I guess we don't call them modules anymore.
They're called modules, yeah.
Okay. I was like, is that out of date?
They're more called, well, they're technically some of them are still modules, but because they don't do as many like smaller thin modules that you can be able to get. Those. They're just like adventure books. They're full on
adventure books. I do.
That's why Tales from the Yawning Portal is a bunch of modules put into one book.
Yes, which that's my jam. But first of all, I love the Yawning Portal, but that's a whole other kettle of fish. Because I love a good dungeon crawl.
How many times can we get Tanya to say kettle of fish in this OOC?
Right? Sometimes I march to my own kettle of fish. It was a button that I used to wear in high school. But at any rate, because that's like what we always come back to, is that when you look at any of these books and you're looking at any of these races and any of these classes and any of the places and anything, it's like, use it as your jumping off point and your inspiration. If you love it as is, you know, nothing wrong with that. If you think tieflings should be 1,000,001 colors and not just human colored and variations of red, then now you have a whole Skittles world worth of tieflings. If you want to, by the way, we finally got the Theros book and I read the Minotaurs, which is 2 pages, by the way. Wizards of the Coast, I would like you to hire me to make a whole book on Minotaurs. For reasons. I just want to say. So it's 2 pages, and it was It was like, they're like, most of them are evil because of enculturation. I was like, pass. But like, if it's a thing like that, where it's not something that makes you happy, you think you've got a better idea, or you know, go for it.
Lars plays Minotaur in the Theros game I run.
Does he eat people?
Huh?
Does he eat people?
No. So Lars's character is named Throckmorton. He named him after a meme. Yes. The cousin Throckmorton meme. Lars named his character after that, and he made a Southern gentleman. And like he speaks like the very big Southern accent, and he was a gladiator. And the way that I made like gladiator matches is that it's basically like WWE, where it's all staged.
Right.
Like that's how gladiator matches go in like my version of Theros. And I was like, it's all fake. They all rehearse it beforehand. And Lars is like, sweet. And then
you want to talk about
then his character, so the reason his character left the gladiator stuff is because he's training one of my other players to be like a fighter, because my brother's a barbarian, and it hasn't clicked that he's a barbarian and that she's a fighter. Like their characters haven't realized it, that they're different.
I have a weird soft spot for Minotaurs. I
love Lars's character.
Baby cows, especially like baby Elin Koo.
Lars loves Throckmorton.
This is a thing that I kickstarted called the Seas of Vodari. It's like a whole nautical supplement, whatever. But this is before Minotaurs became a playable race in 5e. They have a thing about Minotaurs in the map is falling out. And I would like to say that Minotaurs are Taurs, as they are called, by most people, are a rare sight around Vodari, are most known for their size and strength. Like, these once brutal conquerors have turned into a peace-loving meritocracy. And it does not say anything about them eating people. So, if you like better representation of Minotaurs, look for the Seas of Vodari.
To be fair, in Theros, it doesn't say anything about them eating people, but that is some old school.
In the monster manual, it does.
In the monster manual, it does.
So, the reason I also brought over my 2nd edition books is because I wanted to read this. Class restrictions and level limits. The human race has one special ability in the AD&D game. Humans can choose to be any class. Warrior, wizard, priest, or rogue. We won't go into like the breakdowns on that. And can rise to great level in a class. The other races have fewer choices of character classes and usually are limited in the level they can attain. You literally had less options for what you could be, and you couldn't reach the highest levels in said class. But here's the thing. The limits are high. But there's a special thing that non-humans could be. If you were a human, you could not multi-class. So you had to be any other of what they call demi-human races in this to be able to multi-class. You couldn't do that as a human. You could dual class, which was you stop taking levels in one class and continue taking levels in another. But you could not, fight phase thief and all that stuff. So if we want to do a deep dive into that, I have second edition. I don't have first edition, but that's what the trove is for.
By the way, I just got invited to a Facebook group that is all about first edition.
Wow, look at that.
I know. And so I want to harvest it kind of for ideas and look at like what people are talking about, because I really do want to have the OOC or something else that we do where we really talk about, where we kind of get into the meat of the changes and where we're going.
What's going to bring up is Tanya mentioned Men and Monsters, and then I'm going to bring up Art and Arcana, which is a visual history of Dungeons and Dragons, which does talk about. I don't have the special edition version, but
Men and Magic, Men and Monsters. I can't
remember. I know there's also like a documentary on Amazon, on Prime. But this talks about the wargaming and the miniature gaming and stuff like that, obviously, because it's literally it's a visual history. It takes you through the history of Dungeons and Dragons and like how TSR fell apart and like all of that stuff. So all of my books, I went and picked up some of them.
Yay!
So I think I've made a decision that if I do end up having to my next character, I want to delve deeper into how I started setting up Dragonborn, and I want to explore that more. So I think my next character is going to be another Dragonborn, but I don't think it'll be Silver again. I don't know what I'm going to do yet. I'm excited now.
I'm not, because that means that Jack has died.
No. Jack's not dead.
Run away.
I will say that we've done
Jack
some things.
is still watching.
Jack is still watching. I think we've done things about like, we've done the memes of like, what vibe do I give off, or all that stuff. I think we need to just do a poll, or not even a poll, just like comment on like what races and classes. We need to do this on Annika, Amelie, Tanya, hold me to this, that we need to put a thing on one of the Facebook groups that's like, do you gravitate to a certain race and class, and why? Because when I was younger, of course, I was like, I'm gonna be an elf ranger, like like the stereotypical like 13, 14-year-old, like super obsessed with Lord of the Rings, like I'm gonna be Legolas kind of like thing. And now I'm like, fuck you, I'm a dwarf paladin. Like if you invite me to play in your game, I'll be like, can I be a paladin? Like, no, yes. I'm like, okay. The next time, Sarah, do you want to play a different character? No, can I just be a different kind of paladin? I will play pallies all day, every day. I love paladins.
I'm a different paladin. Like, I'm still a dwarf. I'm a little taller and a different gender. And
my beard is a different color.
And my beard is a different color.
I will change the race up. Right now, I'm playing a half-orc paladin. Her name is Odit, and she's great. And then, but like, I'm like, ooh. What about this elven paladin that's like the goddess, like paladin of the goddess of love, and they're like a redemption paladin. Like I have like all of these different, because there's all these different paladin like sub things that you can choose, and I'm just like paladins. And I'm not a religious person. I am, in fact, an atheist. But I'm like, nope, I friggin' love paladins. They're the greatest class ever, as far as I'm concerned. They're the best. And it's like I realized that in the last like 5 years. Every time, even when I'm playing like D&D games, like video games, I'm like making a paladin. Making a paladin.
I love
making a paladin.
I am now going to make my amorphous gnome in a bunny rabbit onesie a paladin. I am going to figure out how to do that now.
So the way I like to make characters that are gigantic. So if they are 7 to 8 feet tall, I love making those. Love making characters like that, except for like the characters I've made for this game. And then for non-spellcasters, I love monks. And then for spellcasters, I really like druids. So like,
So
those
I
are
have
the,
this thing because
that's
when
the
I-
setup.
So when I started in second edition, there weren't a lot of options. And so I gravitated towards fighter because can I tell you that as complicated as magic casting is
Now,
y'all, my little like in college brain was already like fried with homework and whatever. I could not, like, it was hard
Yeah.
enough doing like THACO and all of that, right? But to have
Yeah.
added all the extra stuff.
That's why I picked
I
monk for
regret
my
it.
first like hardcore campaign. That's why I picked monk. And then I like dipped into spellcasting when I picked way of the four elements to get like just like 3 spells, and that was it.
Right. So I have to say when it changed, like because monk was not a thing. When it changed where there were more classes, and then they've played with various subclasses and class paths and various ways of doing things. And that they busted the multi-class issue and all that kind of stuff. That it took me a while. I was like in my safety bubble for a very long, where I'm like, I am an elf and I am a fighter, which I know is what Finland is, but
But that's because
also
that
based
was
on
Finland.
my first character. So,
But
but that was like my safety bubble, right? But I have in the last few years, and really since 5e, been like emboldened to try new things, and that excites me. But I do find it interesting that people tend to gravitate towards.
so these are the classes. These are the classes from second edition. Warrior. Standard is fighter, and then your subsets are ranger and paladin.
Yep.
Wizard, your subsets. Mage, which is the overall just kind of like jack of all trades, master of none. Illusionist, and the other, so like evoker, necromancer, stuff like that. Priest, which your priests are clerics, druids, and other. And it explains nothing about other in the book. It just says other. And then rogues, you could be a thief or a bard.
Okay.
Which I have to say, like, yeah, it ended up being like catch all, and I hate to use this word, but this is kind of what happened, shamans. And that was like a whole thing that people kind of did under that heading.
So
and luckily
speaking
died
of classes,
along the way.
yesterday for my birthday we were playing Jackbox games, and we were playing Trivia Murder Party. And one of the trivia questions was, which one of these are not like our D&D classes? And I was like, oh, I should have this down. Everything it listed were not D&D classes. They were D&D backgrounds. And so I picked none of them. But the game picked all of them. And we're like, this is the right answer. I was like, this is not right. Jackbox TV fixed Trivia Murder Party. It's
Fix your
wrong.
game!
It's wrong.
Mojang, fix your game! Oh, Mojang doesn't make Jackbox.
Was it like charlatan, urchin, like
yeah, like soldier and stuff. And I was like, these are not classes. They are bad. And all of my friends who were playing with me, they were like, wow, you should have gotten that right. And I was like, I did get it right.
I did get it right. The game is clearly wrong.
Yeah. I was so
I
angry.
have the documentation. I will cite my sources.
All right, we're at our
So,
hour. Do we want to do a wrap up?
I mean,
the
I'm
wrap
fine.
up. Mike Nysul is a nice person. Do not hold him accountable for all of the bad things that his character is doing to
Or
the group.
after possibly leaving in
Yeah.
the future.
Do not blame him. He is just doing what I asked him to do, which was be mean to the group. So we're on that. If you guys want to hear us talk about, especially me and Mike and Tanya and other people that have played for a while, we'll get some other gamers that have been gaming for more than 20 years. We'll come on and talk about the history of D&D for a while. If you guys want to hear that, let us know, because of course, I was like a history person. Like, I'm a historian. That's what my freaking degree is in. So I love doing deep dives into stuff like this. So we'll all pull out like our first edition, second edition, third edition books and be like, whoa! We might talk about fourth edition, but probably not, because no.
Speaking of fix your game.
Okay, so a quick run up. Fourth edition was Dungeons and Dragons trying to make a tabletop game for video gamers,
Yeah.
and it did not work.
Oh. Oh
Oh,
no.
my cats
They
are
tried
so
to take a
cute.
they tried to take a video game and say, "Oh, this is what people like in video games, and we're gonna put it in a TTRPG. Maybe people will come back to our TTRPG." People said, "Haha, this is crap," and left. And then they're like, and then they did a major revamp, and we're gonna simplify it. And then 5e happened. People were like, "Oh, we're coming back now.
Yeah, no.
This is what happened."
5e is what I wanted. 5e is what I wanted 3.5 to be.
Yeah. So, if you guys want to hear us talk about like classes, characters, let us know what you want to hear us talk about in other OOCs. Anybody else have a wrap up about their characters and what's going to be happening in the next episode when we record on Sunday? Just
Y'all,
having a big
I'm
debrief.
not gonna kill Jack off, but like, oof. That was a
Good one.
bad
Good
wordplay.
one.
No, I am not going to kill off Jack, but also now I really am excited about making this new Dragonborn, and so
We're just gonna have to
figure
have.
out a way to.
It's okay.
We're just gonna have a D&D one-off where we all get to play.
With me, for me, the green tiefling, I've decided tieflings, depending on their color, it's like color theory. You get a blue and a yellow tiefling,
like
they
what their
make a
mood
green
is?
baby.
I was going to say also, here's the thing, is because if we look at it as far as like
Color
having
theory.
fiendish heritage, fiends aren't all red. There are green fiends.
Yeah.
Fiends. There are white fiends. There are black fiends. And is it demonic or are you devilish or are you the neutral neutral evil fiends, which
Oh,
are
I
like
just realized
whatever.
if
So it's like, what is your fiendish heritage? Does it come from a pit fiend? Does
Yeah.
it come from a succubus? Does it come from a bone devil? Weird.
Whistler's gonna have a
wait.
time.
What?
I was just thinking that.
Whistler's gonna have such a time with my character.
No.
Oh,
Oh no, poor Whistler.
Every time Whistler casts like whatever that is to find fiends, it's like, well, you have
It's
them
just
right
gonna
next.
be you.
Tieflings don't spark that. Tieflings
Okay.
don't trigger that
Oh,
because
it'd
you
be
are a
so-
humanoid.
oh, it'd
there's
be
not
so
there's not
funny,
enough
though.
fiend in
Humanoid.
you to trigger the thing.
Low
But
level.
it's just like the heritage. It's like
Oh.
if somebody wanted to play a Genasi, like it wouldn't find an elemental because you would be Genasi.
Oh, but it'd be so funny though.
But I think it's like going back to like just any kind of like real world prejudice of like any kind of thing. It's like what no
It's
like Whistler just
you
like
get the one drop rule.
yeah exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, let's find out what happens in the near future. Anybody have anything else they want to add to this OOC? Otherwise, I'm going to go reshelve my books. And I had to bring them over here because I was like, we're talking about second edition. I have the books.
I mean, I want to say like, thanks for being here. one.
Yes.
And I'm excited to find. You asked what's gonna happen. I have no idea what's gonna happen. No.
Yeah,
idea.
the next game that I'm anticipating a lot of role playing. Like I am
I
anticipating
anticipate it's
so
gonna
much
be
role playing.
role-playing.
It's just everybody like sitting down, crying, getting drinks, having food, taking a shower, and being like, "Where do we go from here?"
Bath time.
yeah.
Oh, so
Probably all like eating food, crying in the shower. Like that's
Yeah.
Bath time. Finally.
So we still don't know if there will be a shower available because we haven't decided to go back to town
we haven't
yet.
decided to go back to town. The last we said we're going straight to the portal. So
Still
Oh,
have to-
there's going
you
to be
still have to go
argument.
through town for that.
no, we can go around town.
Yeah, make it longer. Make it longer. Sure.
Aster's gonna
Walk
be
around town. Have a
Walking
shower.
and you're going around town. Aster's
Aster's
just like,
gonna
bye.
wiggle out of Jack and just go bath.
Aster, you guys see Aster just going to the east. You're like, Aster, where are you
Wiggle.
going? Aster's like, bath. Aster has like find bath as a spell, and it's just like
No,
just,
it's
like
like-
has hones
it's-
in.
That's gonna find the one like waterfall and grotto that is in this area.
Aster's
Alright,
got
it's
like
just,
Aster's got like the quest marker that's just pointing at their house, being like bath.
I love it.
So
All
the
right.
next title of the next episode is gonna be like baths and like arguments and water baths something. It's gonna be like baths and arguments or something like that. Make that make sense.
Double
It'll just be
Yeah.
bath.
Bath. Yeah. All right, I'm gonna go reshelve my books. It is my day off, but I'm gonna be back to organizing. I'm reorganizing my bedroom at this point. So
Yes.
Segmet's not happy at me because every time I move something, she sits on it, and then I move it again, and she's like, "What the hell?"
Yep. Okay.
So
Goodbye, everybody. We
Bye,
love you
everybody.
all.
Thanks for joining us. I'm gonna go reshelve my books and make my cat even